Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and welcome to the Holiday Cup. This is a 1500 CP format, and the allowed types are Normal, Grass, Electric, Ice, Flying, and Ghost. In this meta, the #1 ranked Pokemon is Rockslide Vigoroth. Rockslide Vigoroth is deadly into just about everything, but I've got some spicy tech to help fight back, and that is Shadow GOLURK. Shadow GOLURK got a big buff with its move Mudslap, now generating extra energy, and it completely walls energy from GOLURK. So without further ado, let's hop into some Holiday Practice Cup battles, and let's watch Shadow GOLURK terrorizing Vigoroth. Hopping into the first match, picking up a positive lead, Dunsparce into Charjabug. Charjabug farms up a bunch of energy, opponent safe switches into Vigoroth. Vigoroth has play into just about everything in this meta, but it is completely walled by Shadow GOLURK. Rockslide still does quite a lot of damage. Shadow GOLURK has a complete wall to energy from Vigoroth, but it is still extremely frail. Earth Power is able to connect and get the KO. In comes Aurorus, and Aurorus getting absolutely shredded by the Mudslaps. I'm going to send in the Dunsparce, as Dunsparce will be able to hit this Aurorus for super effective damage with the drill runs, and I can't really afford to have the Frostlass being hit with a Meteor Beam. I try and throw on good timing. Unfortunately, the game forces an overtap, and I end up throwing on alignment, which is really not ideal. It's very likely my opponent will bait here, but in my view, it is still worth shielding, because I can't risk a Meteor Beam landing. I'm going to be shielding up here. Opponent is going to full send the Meteor Beam. I farm up, my opponent switches into the Charjabug, and they fire off their discharge. That is going to connect. I'm going to throw one additional rollout and then send in the Frostlass. And Frostlass should be in a position to clean up this game. My opponent will go for the discharge. That does quite a lot of damage, but I can farm up, get the knockout with the Shadow Ball, and then the Aurorus is going to have to go for a Meteor Beam to get rid of the Frostlass, because this is definitely not Weather Ball range. Frostlass farming up and winning charge attack priority over this Aurorus. Shadow Ball picks up the knockout, and that's a good game. Picking up a good lead in the next match, Dunsparce into Lantern. Opponent is going to look to safe switch, but they safe switch not into a Vigoroth, but into a Dubwool. So I'm very happy that I waited to see the name on the Pokemon that switched in, instead of just seeing the normal typing and assuming that it's Vigoroth. I'm farming up with the Dunsparce, I switch into the Frostlass, and I am able to successfully catch a Body Slam, where it is going to be double resisted. The downside, however, is that this Dubwool has a truly insurmountable energy lead, so if they want, they don't even have to bait to win the 2s here. They can just go straight for the payback. I can fire off the Avalanche to get the shields back, but if my opponent wants switch advantage, they will be able to dictate switch advantage in this game. I continue to farm up with the Frostlass, perfect charge move timing by my opponent as they fire off another payback. I'm going to commit the shield. If I am going to lose switch, I want shields down. So I am going to fire off the Avalanche, grab the final shield from my opponent. My opponent is going to be firing off the payback, and payback will pick up the knockout. I'm going to send in the GOLURK now and look to get ahead on energy, hoping to make it to an Earth Power. Opponent sends in the Lantern. Looks like I'm not going to get the Earth Power, but it looks like I'm one short. I switch into the Dunsparce. In the back, it's Vigoroth. So I don't have the alignment I need, but I think I have a win con. I should be one Mudslap away from the Earth Power, so all I have to do is not KO the Vigoroth. I need to leave it in like a range where I can farm down with one Mudslap, and then I can win CMP over the Lantern. My opponent realizes this, so they're not throwing their charge moves. I'm going to go for an Undercharge here. The Undercharge puts them exactly at 1 HP. Opponent is going to fire off their energy. I'm going to be sending back in the GOLURK, going for the Mudslap farm down here. Mudslap connects. GOLURK is 5 energy short of the Earth Power. Disaster strikes. I thought I was 1 Mudslap off, but I'm 2 Mudslaps off, and we lose a heartbreaking game. We see a tough lead in the next match, Dunsparce into Palossand. Palossand is the other ghost ground type in this meta. Palossand, probably the more meta version of this team, is putting Palossand instead of the GOLURK, but man, GOLURK is just so much fun. Unfortunately, Scorching Sands does get the attack drop, which means these Shadow Balls are going to do absolutely nothing to the bulky Pachirisu. Pachirisu is going to be able to tank 2 Shadow Balls. My goal here is I could send in the GOLURK and completely wall the energy, but I think it will be slightly more valuable if instead I go for the rollout farm down with the Dunsparce. This way I can leave with energy to threaten whatever my opponent decides to send in. I continue to farm with the Dunsparce. Opponent makes it to another move with the Pachirisu. Pachirisu, Thunderbolt connects. That does quite a lot of damage. Dunsparce does get the farm down. In the back, it's Vigoroth, and this game is so winnable. I fire off the Drill Run. Opponent lets it through. In comes the Shadow GOLURK. Shadow GOLURK farming up a ton of energy. Every move here is resisted, so I know that I can tank 1, They go for the body slam that is double resisted, and I decide I'm going to go for my own double resisted move. I'm going for the Shadow Punch. That gets the shield from the opponent. They're firing off energy. I think I will need to commit a shield here, as unfortunately, I'm just running out of HP, and the mud shots from Palossand will add up. GOLURK firing off the Shadow Punch. Again, this is where the buffed energy generation on Mud Slap is quite nice. Opponent not able to get the double up. GOLURK makes the Shadow Punch, takes down the Palossand, and secures the victory with one Mud Slap onto Vigoroth. Picking up a pretty decent lead in the next match, Dunsparce into Altaria. Opponent save switches into Vigoroth. Again, Vigoroth's save switch is absurdly strong in this meta, but if you have something like Palossand or Shadow GOLURK, you can just completely shut it down. The resisted Rock Slide still does quite a lot of damage, but Shadow GOLURK can pretty comfortably win the zeros here, and GOLURK is going to leave with enough energy to make it to a move versus the Altaria. I make it to the move versus the Altaria, accidentally overtap, but thankfully the GOLURK with a shred of HP is able to make the last second Ice Punch. Sorry, the last second Shadow Punch, not the Ice Punch. And now, speaking of Ice, in comes Frostlass. Sky Attack is going to connect in the back. It's Lantern, and now I have the alignment that I need. I have the hard counter for Altaria in Frostlass, and I have Dunsparce on the Lantern. Drill Run is going to be shielded up by my opponent. My opponent, very nice charge move timing here. They're going to be firing off their energy. I tank any one move, but I do want to preserve some health on the Dunsparce, so I am going to commit a shield. I'm now firing off the Drill Run. Drill Run into the Lantern is going to be no shielded by my opponent. I continue to farm up with the Dunsparce. I should be able to live a Thunderbolt here, not super well. My opponent ends up going for the Surf. I am able to withstand that damage, and I go for the Drill Run, and thankfully their switch timer was just not yet up, I don't believe. So Drill Run is going to be shielded. I farm up, I go for the Drill Run. This is going to pick up the knockout onto my opponent's Lantern, and then from here I can just switch back into the Frostlass, make it to the Avalanche, and Avalanche is going to secure the victory. We've got more Vigoroth in the next match, but this time it's on the lead. If I see a Vigoroth in the lead, just immediate save switch into the Frostlass, as Frostlass is able to outpace. My opponent now going to send in an Obstagoon, so they could very well be running like a triple counter strategy. Avalanche is going to be shielded, and I'm going to let the first move through. Opponent goes for Obstruct, so they are looking to boost up their defense, and now they're going to be able to tank this Avalanche quite a bit better. I'm firing off another Avalanche. Avalanche will be no-shielded by my opponent. I continue to farm up with the Frostlass, and the opponent accidentally plays to a CMP tie that they do not win. This guarantees both shields or switch advantage. My opponent is going to give up switch. They will get a ton of energy on the Vigoroth, but that energy not going to do a whole lot for them going up against the Shadow GOLURK. The thing is, I still don't know what they have in the back, so I may want to expend a shield on the GOLURK just to preserve some HP in case it ends up being something that can beat the Dunsparce. So I am going to commit the shield as the opponent goes for the body slam, continuing to farm up with the GOLURK. I think I can double shield and farm down. Let's see. Opponent is going to switch. It is triple counter in the back. It's Breloom. Breloom, probably just as glassy as the Shadow GOLURK, but Breloom can output quite a lot of damage, which is scary. I'm going to be firing off this Shadow Punch. Shadow Punch is shielded. GOLURK continuing to farm. Opponent is going to fire off the Seed Bomb to get the KO. The question is, can they make it to Dynamic Punch? If they can, then I'm going to lose this game. I'm farming up. Opponent is going to make it to a move. Did they get there? Is it Dynamic Punch? It's not. It's just the Seed Bomb, and I leave with the Drill Run loaded. Drill Run is going to be able to knock out the low health Vigoroth, and triple counter proves to be a scary challenge, but we're able to get the win. Picking up a decent lead in the next match, Dunsparce into Skeledirge, farming up a ton of energy. Opponent save switches into, you guessed it, a Vigoroth, and another Vigoroth is gonna fall victim to the ground ghost type GOLURK. As I mentioned earlier, you can run either GOLURK, or the slightly more meta version is probably running Palossand. I definitely prefer GOLURK just because, I mean, look at the thing. It is a hilariously designed Pokemon. Palossand does have the more consistent moveset, with Mudshot having a lot better energy generation, but the fast move pressure from Mudslap can be advantageous. I'm going to send in the Dunsparce and play to the CMP tie because my opponent has 100 energy, so there's no way they're going to go for an extra Incinerate. I can fire off the Drill Run. Drill Run is going to be no-shielded by the Skeledirge. In the back, it's Piloswine, and at this point, I should just have this game won. I can fire off this Drill Run, get the shield from the opponent, send in the Frostlass, and as long as I don't get Stone Edged, I should be in a pretty nice spot. They could also be running High Horsepower as the nuke move, but just in case they're running Stone Edge, I am going to respect it with a shield. and I can farm up here and go for the Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball does do more damage in neutral situations than an Avalanche. I'm able to grab the shield from the opponent. I am going to use my final shield, and at this point, this game has basically concluded. They are actually running high horsepower, so no Stone Edge from the opponent there. But either way, with 2 shields to hide behind, Froslass, an incredibly deadly closer, and we take the game. Another match, another Vigoroth, this time not on the safe switch, but on the lead. Again, I'm just going to safe switch and go into Froslass. Opponent is going to respond with Litleo, and Litleo is an absolute wall to energy from Froslass. But even so, Avalanche does quite a lot of damage, and it looks like the second Avalanche is going to come very close to KOing, or potentially could get the knockout. It's going to be close. Opponent doesn't want to risk it, and they commit a shield. So that works out pretty nicely for me. I can now send in the Dunsparce, basically just use Dunsparce to absorb energy, as I don't have to shield the Dunsparce, whereas if I sent in the Golurk, I would have to shield potential crunches. They're able to buff up their attack with a Flame Charge, and now this second move, the second Flame Charge is going to do quite a lot of damage. I'm firing off this Drill Run. Drill Run is going to pick up the knockout here. Opponent actually commits the shield. I switch into the Golurk, and I get the snipe, denying the energy. In comes Vigoroth. I'm farming up a ton of energy with the Golurk in the back. It's Skeledirge. Unfortunately for the opponent, they were triple weak to the Golurk. I go for the Shadow Punch. That gets them to 1 HP. I get the Mud Slap farm down, and I leave with the Earth Power loaded. Earth Power is going to secure the knockout onto the Vigoroth, and we get a 2-shield flex. A Core Breaker returns in the next match, leading Dunsparce into Dubwool. I'm going to save switch into Froslass, but this Dubwool does not build up to a payback. And they're actually running Wild Charge, and that makes it quite a bit better for my Froslass to deal with. In comes Pachirisu. Pachirisu is extremely bulky, able to withstand that Shadow Ball surprisingly well. Pachirisu not wanting to take a second move, so they're going to be firing off the Thunder Punch, and Thunder Punch is going to get the KO onto the Froslass. I'm going to send back in the Dunsparce. Opponent can go for charge moves here, but Pachirisu doesn't output a ton of damage, so I'm going to be able to withstand this no problem. And I'm just looking to massively overfarm and go for the Drill Run. I'm at the back-to-back here, which is what I wanted. I wanted to be able to get some chip damage on whatever my opponent decides to send in. They send in the Dubwool. I'm firing off the Drill Run into the Dubwool, and then it's time for Shadow Golurk. In comes the Shadow Golurk. In the back, it's Gligar. And unfortunately, I have lost. And this game is a really good opportunity to talk about Palossand. Palossand, in this situation, would potentially still be able to win, because Palossand has Shadow Ball, and with Mudshot, you're able to generate energy very quickly, whereas unfortunately, Golurk, if it gets stuck up against one of the flyers, just doesn't have that same flexibility. Gligar, unfortunately, is just going to be able to take this game. At this point, I accidentally clicked the shield button. I should have just let this go because I don't have a win con at this point. But my opponent is going to overfarm quite a bit, send in the Dubwool, and one double kick from the Dubwool as it registers is going to be enough to knock out the Dunsparce, and now it's my opponent getting the 2-shield flex. Alright, hopping to the final match, picking up a pretty nicely Dunsparce into the Shadow Haunter. I'm farming up. Opponent is going to save switch into Hisuian Electrode. That's a pretty cool pick from the opponent. I'm firing off the Drill Run here, looking to farm up energy with the Dunsparce. Dunsparce farming up a massive amount of energy. We're going to see Electrode firing off a move. Electrode goes for the Energy Ball. I'm going to save this energy and send in the Froslass. Froslass, definitely not going to be a massive fan of a potential Wild Charge, but Wild Charge is not going to be enough to KO. The Wild Charge connects. That does so much damage, but Froslass does get the farm down. Haunter can just win CMP here if they want to, but instead, they're actually going to go for the 1-shield farm down. Only getting to 1 move, so I'm going for the Shadow Ball, but it's a very safe shield for my opponent. But getting a shield is quite nice, because I have a ton of stored energy on the Dunsparce from earlier. My opponent has a lot of energy as well, though, but I have 2 shields to hide behind. They go for the Ice Punch, I commit the shield. I throw an alignment just because I was getting close to 100 energy. Drill Run is going to be shielded, and my opponent, potentially anticipating me to throw one in the move, does not go for their move. I get the knockout. In the back, it's Shadow Galvantula. And here's a situation where having that Mud Slap damage is quite nice. They go for the lunge. That does a massive amount of damage, but Golurk can make it to the Shadow Punch. And just the damage output from Shadow Golurk is amazing, and we take the win. While Shadow Golurk may not be the most meta option, I think it's an interesting Pokemon when it comes to the Holiday Cup. As I mentioned several times, there's a more meta version of it, and that's going to be Palossand. But the main goal is Vigoroth is the #1 Pokemon in the cup, so how do we beat it? And if everyone's safe switching Vigoroth, then the ground ghost types like Palossand and Shadow GOLURK could actually see some play, just to completely invalidate the Vigoroth safe switch and make people try for a bit more creative solutions when it comes to getting wins. I'm probably going to be sticking to more Master League this upcoming week, just because there's so much stuff to test in the Master League, but I did want to test out some Holiday Cup battles. As expected, an overwhelming amount of Vigoroth, and if that's the case, then the ground ghost types definitely do have the potential to shine. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support guys provide is sincerely appreciated, so thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.